Something odd is occurring in the depths of Ukraine, something the world wasn't supposed to discover. In hidden workshops and underground laboratories, a new type of weapon is being created that could potentially alter the dynamics of the war in ways previously unanticipated. It is not merely a weapon of destruction. It has now come to symbolize the resilience, creativity, and an unknown force that is developing from the heart of a nation in distress. What is this secret creation that has gained the world's attention and clearly rattled some of its adversaries? Stay tuned, because the truth is stranger than the rumor. Before we begin, please make sure to tap like, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave your comments. What you are about to hear may change everything you thought you knew. As the war in Ukraine calms down, another struggle has started to shake out from the guns. Deep in its cities, factories begin to churn out shells, armored vehicles, and drones that symbolize strength and survival. This defense has become a matter of national pride, but with the pride comes risk. Billions are running through clandestine wartime contracts, and worry is growing about how fast Ukraine is rising. When transparency fades, what should be a country's proudest moment could be its greatest vulnerability. So, when auditors found instances where contracts were awarded to higher bidders, deliveries weren't made, and impossible to understand prepayments took place, this was no longer an incidental clash of the cost of war, but a larger and deeper concern. The responses are still buried under official silence, but one truth remains: Ukraine's pursuit of victory is not merely on the battlefield, it is off it, and in the pursuit to hold the powerful accountable to honesty. As the war effort in Ukraine continues to gain momentum, a quieter metamorphosis is poised to shape its future. Kiev produces almost 60% of its own weapons systems, a stunning development that President Volodymyr Zelensky calls a marker of independence. Factories across the country are working around the clock to produce deadly drones, armored vehicles, and even ground robots designed to outwit the enemy. But this new independence is about more than firepower. It's about laying the groundwork for sustainable security once the war is over. For what Zelensky imagines for the future is to create homegrown weapons that will serve both as a protector and a warning. If all of this descends from fantasy to reality and becomes plan, and is utilized in a successful way, Ukraine could stand for resilience for generations to come. However, behind each hopeful promise of the future remains an old burden. The country must reckon with its corrupt past in military expenditures, for without good faith, not even the most powerful arsenal can ensure peace. As the investigation progressed, new information became available, which complicated the story. Since early 2024 and through March 2025, Ukraine's defense spending has remained under sharp scrutiny. Government auditors spent months examining the Defense Procurement Agency's purchases, tracing every contract and transaction that fueled the nation's war effort. Their 465-page report did not accuse anyone of theft or embezzlement, but several contracts were discreetly forwarded to law enforcement for deeper investigation. Yet even without criminal findings, the details unsettled many. The audit revealed that dozens of agreements for artillery shells, drones, and other critical weapons were not granted to the lowest bidders. If transparency was meant to guide Ukraine's reformed procurement system, the results suggested otherwise. Prices had surged by more than 5 billion hryvnia, leaving one question echoing through Kiev's defense circles: why were the lowest bids ignored? As audit findings began to emerge, the discussion of Ukraine's defense expenditures became louder and more factional. Tamerlan Vahabov, a former advisor, put it bluntly that the agency tends to overpay for no reason, and he cautioned that in the chaos of war, the willingness to manage properly can easily evaporate. But not everyone sees this as corruption. Olena Tregub, director of the Independent Anti-Corruption Commission, reminded us that turning down lower bids can sometimes have legitimate rationale. It hinges on whether, in fact, those lower bids had legitimate justification on account of quality or the ability to deliver. But she was clear that even that rationale can cover more nefarious reasons. So as it is, the head of the procurement agency, Arsen Jumadilov, defended his agency, stating that some of those lower offers don't meet strict quality and deliverable standards. He stated that reforms are already happening and that the agency has begun to eliminate middlemen from their contracts to instill ethics, fairness, and confidence. When the world believed Ukraine had reached its breaking point in 2022, something unexpected began to stir behind the front lines. The invasion had unleashed chaos, but it also awakened a silent force within the country. Two powerful veins of supply began to pulse through Ukraine's defense. From the west came the roar of steel, Abrams tanks rumbling across the frozen earth, and M777 artillery flashing in the dark. Yet the true secret lay elsewhere. Inside hidden factories and quiet laboratories, engineers worked through the night, crafting something no one saw coming. If this creation worked, it could shift the balance of war itself. Therefore, whispers spread through the ranks. Ukraine's new secret weapon had finally arrived. Were it not for the scandals of 2023, Ukraine's war mobilization might have continued quietly and undetected while playing out behind the front lines. But once journalists revealed shocking spending on unremarkable items such as eggs and winter coats, it was as though looking forward meant taking a step backwards in Ukrainian liberties and democracy. What followed was relentless outrage, resulting in the resignation of Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov. As a response, the government created a new procurement system completely separated from the previous systems and shadowed politics in Ukraine, effectively a clean slate. But to change the previous corrupt model is not always easy. Before long, two directors were removed on accusations of weak leadership, and doubt once again fell, surrounding the agency like fog. But something extraordinary was happening underneath the chaos. The agency itself began to draw upon its own $9 billion budget, which was largely generated from Ukrainian taxpayer dollars, and this was leading to European support. Denmark was at the helm of a groundbreaking effort, asking European nations to fund Ukraine's own industries, unlocking over $1.5 billion to rebuild a backbone for its defensive industry. If this persisted, Ukraine's past strength would no longer define its capacities. Once quiet factories in the Soviet part of Ukraine were roaring back to life, cranking out weapons, jets, and tanks next to vibrant Ukrainian startups, creating the next generation of defensive technology. In this way, a quiet revolution was taking place that could turn Ukraine's plight into its peak renaissance. Had the early disarray of war not driven Ukraine to improvise, its defense matrix might never have transformed into the unpredictable, creative machine that it is today. When Russia's full invasion disrupted the old supply chain, Ukraine's supply lines were racing against clock and scarcity. In a matter of weeks, Ukraine's stockpile of artillery ammunition completely evaporated. An unseen crisis about which few people in the upper ranks would have known. So Kyiv, in sheer desperation, turned to the arms dealers who had sent Ukrainian weapons into foreign theaters before. Now, these same middlemen were asked to reverse the flow, to buy back what they had previously sold to foreign battlefields in Africa or the Middle East. This scramble for survival gave the arms dealers new power. Known as special exporting companies, they became a link between the faltering Ukrainian army and the patchwork of their suppliers. A government audit would later reveal that by last year, more than 4/5 of all contracts had gone through middlemen of this kind. Each contract would typically carry about a 3% margin, a small percentage on paper, but a small fortune over hundreds of millions or billions worth of military spending. The newly established procurement agency, intended to eradicate corruption and bring structure, quickly found itself caught in exactly the same chaos it was meant to put an end to. If one thought the system was broken, it was Ukraine attempting to build a modern war machine in real time. The old Soviet factories were being activated, but were very slow, and their supply chains were broken. In response, an entirely new ecosystem began to form. 2,000 suppliers across the entire country, from sleek defense startups in the glass towers of Kiev to tiny shops in people's basements and barns. They all were trying to do the same thing: survive through innovation. Some of these initiatives produced results that surprised even the most battle-purposeful commanders. A fleet of small, fast drone boats surged through the waves of the Black Sea, launching precision strikes with improbable accuracy. Their attacks had sunk almost a third of Russia's once powerful fleet, thus reshaping naval warfare in real time. Thus, Ukraine's experiment with chaos began to resemble a strategic revolution. But beneath every success, the trial was marked by dozens of failures. Of the 35 types of surface and submarine drones built by 26 companies, only 3 models were actually able to hit and sink Russian ships. The audits revealed the other side of the audacious experiment. There were contracts signed with companies that had no verified production sites. There were prepayments made for weapons that never arrived. Getting the deliveries was a gamble, and sometimes the deliveries never even served their intended purpose, leaving soldiers waiting at the front. The thrill of innovation was constantly at odds with the dull reality of accountability, and the agency stood in between the two. However, change was already coming. To end the delays and corruption, the agency began experimenting with new models of transparency. One audacious idea was born from that effort: an online marketplace where battlefield commanders could order drones directly from verified manufacturers. Just a few clicks would allow them to skip the bureaucracy and buy what they wanted without waiting for the layers of military bureaucracy to move. If this system is successful, it could change how countries engage and supply war. So, as Director Jumatilov indicated, this is not reform as we noted. This is a game changer in military supply, the ignition source to change desolation to mastery. Should history recognize this war, it will likely do more than catalog the fighting. It will have reason to remember the reinvention that it inspired. Ukraine's fight has become its rebirth: chaos soliciting invention and necessity producing power. As the factories burn and drones take flight, Ukraine is not simply surviving. Ukraine is reconstructing its future. If you found this account of resilience and reinvention moving, remember that dark times do not mean innovation can transform hope. Please stay with us as we reveal more unpublished stories changing the world. Like, share, and comment your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell.